But we're cutting our demos and stuff, and then we deliver him to Foster to show him the new material. And I'll never forget another potentially fatal mistake I made, that when we were finishing up our demos at Danny's studio. And when I think back on that, you're Robert Lamb. You've proven many times over what you do, but this is showing the producer coming off of their biggest record ever, the guy who's replacing Peter Cetera. But I thought, well, they got my back. Woo!
Jason Scheff, formerly of Chicago. That guy is one of my favorite dudes to talk to. I've only interviewed him twice, but I think we spent like 3.5 hours talking about really what jiggles him inside, what makes him an amazing musician. I mean, who replaces Peter Cetera in freaking Chicago? Come on! His father is Jerry Scheff, who is still around and was Elvis Presley's last bass player. He's a legend. What you're about to hear, to me, after 40 plus years in radio, one of the greatest stories I've ever heard. To set the tone here, I basically told Jason at the beginning of this, I think this was our second interview, I want you to be as long-winded as you want. I want you to tell me the story. Don't worry about giving me a Reader's Digest version of joining Chicago and having this work. This was 1986. Cetera was out. They were looking for a new lead singer for Chicago 18, which was a very successful record. I've released thousands of interview clips on this channel. This is probably in the top 5. How it all went down, Jason Scheff, who's no longer in Chicago, of course, but was with them for a heck of a lot of years after Peter Cetera left, how he joined the band. On Rock History Music. First meeting like with the band? Was it one guy, two guys, all the guys?
Okay. So I get an audition. Howard Kaufman, I'll never forget this too. This was great. Howard said to me, Ronnie and I went into the office and to meet Howard. He wanted to make sure I didn't have two heads or something, like, in fact, on the first phone call, he called me and he said, so what's your instrument? And I said, I'm a bass player. He goes, oh, this sounds like a match made in heaven. I'm going, here's like one of the most powerful managers on the planet, and he's being sweet as pie to me, And he says, how old are you? I said, I'm 23. And he goes, uh-oh. I go, what? He goes, can't you say you're 30? These guys were just turning 40 years old. And obviously the potential of creating a monster, no matter how old you are, right? You're joining Chicago. He said, can't you say you're older? And I said, I'll say I'm 80 if you want me to. He goes, no, it won't be a problem. But then he had me come into the office to, like I said, to make sure that, that I didn't have 5 heads. And so we were sitting there. Let me put my power in here. We're sitting there and everything's going good, and he said, it's between you and Mickey Thomas. And right then I just went, well, I'll never get the gig. Mickey's an icon. I think Howard saw my, maybe my head slink down. And he did something that I've used in the past. When Keith Howland joined the band, I did this to him. Howard saw that I was kind of dejected by that phrase. He goes, Jason, they want it to work with you. And I'm going, wow. I didn't have any history, so I'm not going to potentially give any problem, coming from other bands, right? I'm fresh, a kid. And so he was basically telling me, it's your game to lose. He said, Jason, they want it to work with you. Go get the gig, which meant don't torpedo it by letting your brain. So I went to the first audition at Danny's house, and it was in his home studio, and I couldn't really hear that well. No excuses. So they had me learn 3 songs. I can't remember which ones they are, but we blasted through them, and they were like, as far as the musicianship goes and everything, it was like an immediate good fit. It's like I said, I'm a bass player, and it's always been a very comfortable place for me to be. And we went through the 3 songs, and they're going, wow, well, great, man. I wish we would have had you learn more songs. And I said, well, let's play something. They go, did you learn anything? I said, no, but I've grown up on your music, you know? And they're like, they couldn't understand it, couldn't believe it, that I said, let's just play something. They go, you didn't learn anything? I said, no, but let's do something. They go, what do you want to do? And I thought back on the song that really lit me up about Chicago. Again, years in my age, probably Chicago 6. Just You and Me, Feeling Stronger Every Day, right?
Oh, those 2 songs. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I said, let's do Just You and Me. And they go, did you learn it? And I said, no, but I've heard it a million times. And so I think one thing that worked in my favor was a bit of fearlessness and my musicianship, that I played it and sang it. You know, we'd never worked it up before, but I've heard it a million times. It's not going to be a problem. I was even singing.
Obviously refreshing. Sorry to interrupt you, but obviously very refreshing for them when you did that.
I don't know. I don't know what their history is before me. And but I'm sure that, seeing an energy of fearlessness and musicality and really a fit for the band. I was even singing the sax solo because I remember they were like having such a kick out of that. And so we finished it up. And I think it was Panko that said, well, I'm sold. And I'm like sitting there going, I can't believe this. So I know I'm not like mesmerizing them with my voice, right? You can't even really hear it. And obviously I'm a bit, tentative, but Panko says, well, I'm sold. And to this day, I love that Danny did this. Danny said, well, guys, this is a big decision. This is a big decision. And he's obviously a bit nervous. Maybe, should we talk about this? And one of the other guys said, well, I've heard his tape. Again, I love all of this experience to be able to take to any situation. Well, I've heard his tape. So what? Until you can really deliver, in that realm, of being a front man and singing, front and center live and everything. And so they said, Jason, I hate to ask you to do this, but can you step outside while we talk about this? So I go out to Danny's driveway and I'm standing out there and they're just powwowing about this. And I'm like going, I can't believe this. So I come back in and they said, it was Lamb that was always really speaking on behalf of the band. He came to me and said, it looks really good. We have to honor if Mickey wants to come and audition for this, but he's giving me like the indication that things are going well. He goes, we may do another audition in an actual production facility where we can actually really have a PA and everything, but we'll get back to you. So I go home and sure enough, they say, we were going to come into an actual production facility and do a second audition. And that's when I knew that Mickey, I'd heard that he was not interested. Because We Built the City, Sarah, that album ready to go. So he wasn't interested in coming there. So we go back into this big facility and I go in and just do my best again. And again, I'm sure they were not like, wow, this is like the lead vocalist we've been looking for live. But they saw the potential, they saw the potential. And Lamb comes up to me and has this like baseball cap with a super long bill on it and puts it on my head and goes, congratulations, you're in the band. And I'm like literally going, you got to be kidding me. And then all of a sudden there's this, Robert, can we talk to you? So he turns around and he goes back and he talks to them, they're huddled up, and he comes back. He takes the hat off my head. He takes the hat off my head and he goes, it's looking, listen, that's basically was saying this is happening, but we got to figure out how to do it. And so I'll call you. So I leave.
Oh
and
my
I'm going,
God.
I know that I'm in to a degree, but how to do it. So my mind starts working of maybe Mickey's going to come and be the lead vocalist, which I would have been thrilled at. Let me maybe sing a song on the record, and be your bass player. Bass player is no problem. So a day goes by and then Lamb calls me and I wasn't there and he leaves a message, says, "Hey, Jason, I've got great news for you. Or I've got good news for you. Call me up." So I call him back, leave a message, miss him. He calls me back, I miss the call. Howard Kaufman calls me. "Hey, Jason, Howard Kaufman." I said, "Hey, Howard." He goes, "So have you talked to Robert? Have you talked to Robert?" And I said, "No," but he said he's got good news for me. Pregnant pause, and you realizing your life is about to change dramatically. And I'm thinking maybe he says, "Yeah, so listen, Mickey Thomas is going to be the singer, and we're going to bring you in as bass player, and you can cut a song with it." But pregnant pause, and Howard says, "Yep, so who do we talk to make a deal?" And I went, unbelievable. And that's how it happened. And then we go in and we start cutting, we start writing together. And it was just fantastic. Just the vibe is so great. And Bill and I are doing background vocals on other artists. He was bringing me in immediately to Kenny Rogers sessions with Jay Graydon. We worked, on Gino Vanelli's record. A lot of stuff. Suddenly I'm an A-list background vocalist, which I was capable of, right? Potentially fatal mistake I made that when we were finishing up our demos at Danny's studio, I said to Robert, I said, "I got to go in and recut this song or that song." Whatever. I said, "I had a cold when we were cutting, so it's not really strong." And he says, "Don't worry about the vocals. It's just to show him the songs." And when I think back on that, you're Robert Lamb. You've proven many times over what you do, but this is showing the producer coming off of their biggest record ever, the guy who's replacing Peter Cetera. But I thought, well, they got my back. Woo! When I found out that David panicked, and again, I've thanked him for this. David's a buddy of mine, and he got nervous at first. I said, "Man, I needed that." He goes, "No, you're the guy." Oh, I said, "We're not talking about that." I needed to have my ass kicked so that when all of a sudden I realized this guy's not sold on you. And like I said, I was kind of like going, I'm really not expecting this to work out anyway. But then all of a sudden I hear Lamb says, "Sorry, you're working with him. He's our guy." And I know Danny fought for me too. And so I walk in the studio on day one, Chicago 18. And I'll never forget, David had a songwriting camp that was down from Canada. And I was confused. See, I love this, John. You have a way of doing this with people. This is the story. I love it. It's going to be documented because this is the real story. And so I walk in the studio and David says to this group of young writers, "Hey guys, this is the new lead singer of Chicago." And I'm like thinking, how do I behave? I mean, it's like, I know internally that he doesn't really believe in me, nor do I for the situation, but I'm going to it was the beginning of kind of trying to act like something that I guess I should be. "Hello, how you doing?" And they're all bright-eyed. David says, "All right, you guys, we got some work to do, so you got to get out of the room." So they all file out, but the studio door was kept open. All of a sudden, there's David Foster and Humberto Gatica staring me down through the glass. And David says in this real kind of feeble tone, "You want to try one?" And I'm going, "Sure," right? And the sound of the headphones was so amazing. Sounded like the record, man. Humberto Gatica just dialed in this sound. And I took a deep breath. The song started playing. It was my tune. "She was lost uncertain. I got through the first couple lines and I heard this sound and I knew I was up and running, and every line, just my confidence, it felt so comfortable, so relaxed. One by one, those songwriters were coming back in the studio. By the end of the song, I'm getting chills as I tell you this to remember it. By the end of the song, they were all standing there with their mouths open, because I had just sung like I was going to the electric chair. And I knew I drilled it. And Foster had his head in his hands, and he comes up and goes, "You just blew my mind. But then you knew you would." And we sailed through the record, man. No problem.
God.
Zero issues. One time I felt like I was maybe not coming up with it. It was on If She Would Have Been Faithful. And I thought I was kind of cheating a little bit on some of the chorus. And so I was just starting to kind of say to myself, uh-oh. And Dave said, no, man, you're killing it. Keep going. So, okay. And we just blasted through this. The only rest of it, I was so inspired. And to be honest, have never been since that record. I'm very proud of the work that I've done with Chicago. But that particular moment of being with a modern day Mozart and Champlin by my side through most of it. Lamb, of course, we did, great vocals on it, but Champlin and me, and just feeling enveloped in that was so inspiring that it was like, come on, this is this unproven kid that really kind of shouldn't be there. But that's what I always tell people, when you're in the batter's box and it's at the bottom of the ninth and it's tie game and it's full count, you're either going to feel comfortable or not, man. And thank God it felt comfortable.
We're not fooling around here. Jason, what a story, huh? I'm serious. He was getting goosebumps as he was telling the story of how he joined Chicago for Chicago 18, 1986. Remember, if you want to donate to the channel, there's a PayPal link at the very top of the description. Join our Patreon. You'll get early access to thousands of interview clips. And buy some swag from Rocky Street Book and Rocky Street Music. The links are all at the top of the description. Comment on the videos, share them on social media, like them, and we'd appreciate that. I'm John Bowden. This is Rocky Street Music.